Dust motes danced in the faint rays of sunlight that pierced the boarded-up windows. Ilara's breath echoed in the oppressive silence as she stepped cautiously over a rotting floorboard. The air hung heavy, thick with the smell of decay, and something else, something indescribable, that sent shivers down her spine. This house, it felt familiar somehow. Ilara ran a hand along the dusty surface of an antique table, its ornate carvings coated in grime. Why had she been drawn here? Something about the abandoned house on Harbinger Lane called to her, whispered promises of forgotten memories. She pushed open a creaking door, its rusty hinges groaning in protest. A cold gust of wind slammed the door shut behind her, plunging Ilara into darkness. Panic welled in her chest, a tight knot of fear. She spun around, frantically searching for the door. "Hello?" Her voice trembled, swallowed by the silence. A low whisper, barely audible, sent chills down her spine. "You're back." The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Ilara strained to hear, her heart pounding against her ribs. The shadows in the room seemed to writhe and twist, taking on menacing shapes in the periphery of her vision. "Who's there?" she demanded, her voice echoing in the cavernous room. Another whisper, closer this time, sent a shiver down her spine. "Don't you remember?" The voice was soft, laced with a chilling familiarity. It sent a tremor through Ilara, a feeling of dread that settled deep in the pit of her stomach. She knew that voice. She knew that voice. Ilara backed away, her hand reaching behind her for support. She bumped against something solid, the cold touch of metal sending another jolt of fear through her. A chair. She remembered this chair. A sob escaped her lips as a memory flickered, a fleeting image of a young girl, her face streaked with tears, sitting in this very chair. The whispers grew louder, swirling around her like a malevolent wind. "Remember!" they hissed, their voices laced with a chilling urgency. "Remember who you are! Remember what happened here!" Panic seized Ilara. She had to get out, escape the whispers and the shadows that seemed to close in on her. She ran towards the front door, her hands shaking as she fumbled with the doorknob. It wouldn't budge. It was locked. She rattled the handle, her fear escalating with each passing second. "Help!" she screamed, her voice echoing through the empty house, but the only response was the sound of her own ragged breathing and the relentless whispers that seemed to seep into her very being. Ilara stumbled back, her eyes wide with terror. She was trapped. Trapped in this house with the whispering shadows and the fragments of memories that clawed at the edges of her mind. She sank to the floor, her back against the cold wood of the door, and let out a sob of despair. A single word, barely audible above the pounding of her heart, reached her ears. "Always." Ilara squeezed her eyes shut, willing the terror to recede. But the whispers were relentless, their chilling message seeping into her consciousness. She was home. Images, fragmented and fleeting, flickered through Ilara's mind. A swing set swaying gently in the breeze, a music box playing a haunting melody, a woman with kind eyes and a warm smile, her laughter echoing through the halls. The whispers seemed to intensify, urging her to remember. She saw herself, a young girl with long, dark hair, playing hide-and-seek in the shadows of the old house. She saw the same girl, her face etched with fear, running through the darkened halls, chased by something she couldn't outrun. The whispers grew louder, their voices tinged with a strange mix of sadness and anger. "They promised," they hissed. "They promised to keep you safe." Ilara pressed her hands against her ears, trying to block out the voices that seemed to claw their way into her soul. But the memories kept coming, each one sharper, more vivid than the last. And with each memory, the truth became more and more horrifyingly clear. This house wasn't just a place she had stumbled upon. It was her prison, a prison she had been trying to escape for years. Section 5. The Girl in the Mirror. Driven by a desperate need to understand, Ilara stumbled through the darkened hallways, the whispers guiding her steps. She reached a room at the end of the hall, its door slightly ajar. A faint light emanated from within, beckoning her closer. She pushed the door open and gasped. In the center of the room, bathed in the eerie glow of a single flickering candle, stood a cheval mirror. And reflected in its dusty surface was not the terrified young woman she had become, but the ghost of her childhood self. The girl in the mirror turned, her eyes meeting Ilara's with a look of chilling recognition. "We're home," she whispered, her voice a haunting echo of Ilara's own. Ilara reached out a trembling hand, her fingers brushing against the cold surface of the glass. The image wavered, the girl's reflection replaced by a vision of the house, shrouded in darkness, its windows like vacant eyes staring back at her. The whispers swirled around her, their voices a chorus of despair. "You can never leave," they whispered. "This house, it holds you captive, just like it holds us." Section 6. A Glimmer of Hope. Ilara stumbled back from the mirror, her mind reeling. She had to escape this house, escape the memories that threatened to consume her. She had to break free from the grip of the past. With renewed determination, Ilara searched for another way out, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. She raced from room to room, each one a grim reminder of her forgotten childhood, each one a testament to the horrors that had unfolded within these walls. Finally, in a dusty attic, she discovered a hidden door concealed behind a crumbling bookcase. A narrow passageway, shrouded in darkness, awaited her. A way out. Could this be her salvation? Could this be the key to escaping the clutches of the house on Harbinger Lane? Taking a deep breath, Ilara stepped into the passageway, the musty air thick with the scent of decay and forgotten things. The whispers followed her, their voices fainter now, as if struggling to reach her from the depths of the house. Section 7. Freedom! The passage seemed to stretch on forever, a labyrinth of twists and turns, but Ilara pressed on, driven by the promise of freedom. Finally, she emerged into the crisp night air, the full moon casting an eerie glow on the dilapidated facade of the house. She had escaped. Ilara stumbled away from the house, her lungs burning, her legs weak with relief. The whispers were gone, replaced by the gentle rustling of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. She was safe. As she ran, the memories that had haunted her began to fade, replaced by a blessed numbness. She had escaped the house on Harbinger Lane, escaped the whispers and the shadows and the girl in the mirror. She was free, or so she thought. Section 8. The Familiar Face. Ilara didn't know how long she ran, but eventually her exhausted body gave way. She collapsed by the side of a deserted road, her chest heaving, her mind still reeling from the ordeal. As she lay there, catching her breath, a car approached, its headlights cutting through the darkness. It slowed to a stop beside her, and a man emerged. He was tall and imposing, with a kind face etched with concern. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice deep and reassuring. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Ilara looked up at him, her heart skipping a beat. She knew him. She knew that face. But how? Why did his presence fill her with such a profound sense of unease? The man smiled gently, extending a hand to help her up. "Come on," he said. "Let's get you out of here. You're safe now." Section 9. Back to the beginning. The man helped Ilara into his car, his touch sending a shiver down her spine. He got behind the wheel, and the car sped off into the night. Ilara stared out the window, her reflection staring back at her, her eyes wide with a dawning horror. The scenery outside the window seemed oddly familiar. The winding road, the gnarled trees, the distant silhouette of a house perched atop a hill. It couldn't be. It couldn't possibly be. The car slowed to a stop, and Ilara's breath caught in her throat. They were back at the house on Harbinger Lane, the house that held her captive, the house she had just escaped. But how? Why? The man turned to her, his face illuminated by the dashboard lights. His smile sent a chill down Ilara's spine. It wasn't a kind smile anymore. It was a cruel, knowing smirk. Section 10. Forever Trapped. "Welcome home, Ilara," he said, his voice a low growl. He leaned closer, his breath hot on her ear. "You can never truly leave," Ilara screamed, a primal sound of fear and despair as she realized the horrifying truth. She hadn't escaped. She had never escaped. The house on Harbinger Lane, the whispers, the shadows, the man with the knowing smile, they were all part of her prison, a prison of her own mind. The man's laughter echoed in her ears as the car door swung open. She was home, and she would be forever trapped within the walls of her own personal hell. The house on Harbinger Lane had claimed her, body and soul.